Weirdly enough, California is one of 11 states in our nation that still allows child marriage. They have no minimum
I didn't know that.
age. Isn't that interesting? So they have no minimum age, just one parent has to sign off on it. So over a 5-year period of time, from 2019 to 2024, it is estimated that 300,000 children, undocumented minors, went missing in the state of Texas.
Insane.
Between when they were picked up by Department of Homeland Security and turned over to our foster care system, HHS.
This is the Disruptive Hope Podcast. Hope sees, hope engages, hope belongs, hope builds. Hope disrupts the narrative of despair, and in the tension of holding both sorrow and joy, we invite hope to redefine the lens through which we see and interact with the world. Embrace the challenge and become an agent of hope in unlikely places. Welcome to the Disruptive Hope Podcast. Hello, welcome back to Human Trafficking 101 on the Disruptive Hope Podcast. I am Hannah, and I'm here with Christy, my co-host.
Hey guys, great to talk with you again. Glad that we're reviving this podcast.
For sure. If you look at last season of the podcast, of this series of the podcast, you'll see that we did kind of hour-long shows. We did 8 of them. They have a little bit more in-depth interviews. Really great content. We encourage you, if you haven't watched it, to go and listen to it. But Christy and I both live in an interesting reality where this is our life, right? We talk about it all the time. We're engulfed in it. We both have a lot of friends ask us about stuff happening around the human trafficking space. And so we decided we were going to try and flip up the format of this. And we're going to kind of just let you guys into the conversations we're having weekly, monthly about human trafficking.
More like daily.
Yeah, daily, but we're not letting you in on a daily. That is too much podcasting. But just trying to let you guys kind of get a peek of some of the real life conversations that are happening. It won't be as perfectly bowed as the last season was, because obviously, that was heavily curated, making sure we got complete stories and stuff like that. So this is going to be more lifetime, more what is going on. So with that being said, Christy, you're actually involved in a lot of interesting things happening in Texas around trafficking.
That's true.
You've helped pull SOS into some of those spaces. Do you want to kind of give me a little glimpse at some of the local stuff you're doing?
So obviously, anti-trafficking is a huge passion point for me. Kind of leading into it, I want to give you guys a little bit of a disclaimer about my perspective, because I'm a high beliefs individual if you do some of the strengths finders. And so everything you hear me talk about, I am hugely passionate about protecting at-risk children. And so everything we talk about is going to be through that lens of, we in this fight against trafficking, how can we protect and secure children, and how can we make those decisions? And as such, that really goes into SOS's role in the fight against human trafficking. And here locally, our U.S. headquarters are in DFW, and we have a lot of really incredible coalitions that are working together, organizations, nonprofit organizations, government, hospital systems, universities, churches, groups that are coming together and saying, okay, it's going to take a lot of us to solve this. How do we begin to go after this in our area? And so I personally sit on the North Texas Coalition Against Human Trafficking. I've been on it for about 1.5 years now, and I absolutely love it because it just brings a lot of voices in. It brings a lot of collaboration in. We've got a lot of cool studies going on. I have a meeting on Thursday, and they're going to present some findings about trafficking here in DFW. But it's really interesting because it brings a lot of current topics to the forefront. And, there's a lot of really cool things going on, even at a statewide level. So in some of the last few meetings, we've been talking about some of the different bills before the Senate and before the House that really are geared towards anti-trafficking, and just some really cool space in there where legislators are trying to go through and change laws that would help protect children. And, that's a huge component in this fight against trafficking. So this is where it gets a little bit more nitty gritty, but I've really enjoyed being part of these coalitions because it brings a lot of voices to the table, and also it brings about a lot of change across a lot of different avenues of life that's going to take all of us moving together in collaboration to really go after trafficking.
Yeah, that's awesome. One thing that we've definitely discovered on this journey of fighting trafficking is it really does take people from all walks of life to actually address this. So the cool thing about the coalition is, just like you said, it is people coming together, nonprofits working together, government officials working together, very bipartisan, right? It's everybody saying, okay, how are we going to help protect some of the children? And we just kind of wanted to walk you guys through. There's 18 bills right now for that are being passed for protecting at-risk children, specifically at risk of trafficking. And kind of just wanted to talk to you guys about a few of them. We're actually going to go ahead and put this on our blog so that if you guys want to go and reference and see all of them, that you can go ahead and do that. But it is so interesting. I think one of the things that I think is really cool as I'm reading through it is you can tell that it is so victim informed, right?
Yeah.
Like the survivor's voice is in this bill. You can hear the struggles that they face, and there's actual things to help ease that. Even once, one of my favorite ones is where it's, hold on, I got to find it. It's HB 539. And it's kind of talking about helping cover the past for these survivors to help remove stigma as they're trying to get new jobs, and kind of helping protect, where obviously a lot of trafficking victims, a lot of trafficking survivors, they have legal things in their past because they were forced to commit crimes. And so kind of going in and helping kind of cover that. So that they can go ahead and really reintegrate into society. It's just so cool to hear the survivor's voice in this.
So important. And I feel like we've come a long way, right? Like that's been hard fought ground to have that victim-centric approach that says we want trauma-informed care in every aspect of this. So that is a huge victory.
Yeah.
Huge victory.
Even as you talk about like trauma-informed care, a lot of these bills are talking about training, like making training mandatory in a lot of different spaces. One of the things that they talked about was for tattoo, piercing, and cosmetology professionals, which is so interesting because I think that maybe a layman person wouldn't think how often those professions are actually interacting with this people group. And so getting them the training that they need, it's huge. It could literally change the way governments identify victims and help secure them. So it's really cool. There is one bill that SOS has been a part of helping push through. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so right now there are 3 bills before Senate that Paxton's helping to push through. And one of them it's Senate Bill 941, and it's basically a requirement that any child entering state conservatorship, so any child going into foster care within 45 days of being in foster care, that they would be screened for trafficking.
Huge.
It's huge because honestly, we have the resources available, we have the care available, but identifying victims of trafficking is a huge component in helping change the trajectory of that child. And so if we could create some standardized forms of care, and this is a perfect opportunity, it's a perfect intervention. That child is already in state conservatorship, so it really is just a few extra steps that would help standardize the care that they will receive, and it would allow us to bring that arsenal of best practices that are available for how you care for survivors of trafficking into a child's life, which would be a game changer in how they would navigate through the foster care system. So this is some foster care reform that we're really hoping gets pushed through, because I think that it really changes the playing field for that child and for their long-term success.
Yeah, it's incredible because, the foster care, we need foster care, right?
Absolutely.
It's just a reality, unfortunately. We need it, but it does need a lot of reform.
It does.
The foster system is honestly kind of the perfect breeding ground for traffickers to target. Kids are moved against their will, oftentimes late at night, right? Because they have to get to a secure location. They have to get placement. They get used to, not knowing the adults around them, not knowing if they can trust the adults around them. And so there's just a lot of vulnerabilities for a system that has to exist, right? We need a place for kids to find safety in the midst of horrific situations. And so I love that they are coming alongside that, going, okay, it's a flawed system, but it's a system that's necessary. How do we strengthen this?
If you've been around me any amount of time, you've heard me talk about this report that was released at the end of last year, where Department of Homeland Security basically said, hey, there are 300,000 children in the state of Texas that went missing between when they were brought over illegally and when they entered the foster care system.
Can we just like slow down and you say that number again? Because
Sorry.
we ran through that, and I do think a lot of people actually don't know. You know, people who've talked to you in person know, but a lot of people don't know that this is happening. So let's say it again so people get it. I want you guys to listen. Get what she's just saying.
So over a 5-year period of time, from 2019 to 2024, it is estimated that 300,000 children, undocumented minors, went missing in the state of Texas between when they were picked up by Department of Homeland Security and turned over to our foster care system, HHS. And so ICE and HHS have been working together going, okay, what's going on? Where are these gaps? How do we do better for children? And I really appreciate that we're pushing for some of these reforms because we have to be more vigilant about protecting children.
Yeah.
Child trafficking is growing way too fast, and where we have these gaps that we are able to identify, okay, wait, that's a really large number of children that we have to step in and we have to do things. So if you're listening and you're like, okay, this is great, I'm obviously passionate about, what do I do? Right, these are bills. So you can reach out to your representative. You can lend your voice in saying, hey, I want to support this. I want to help do things that protect kids. So you as a listener have an active role in this, but it's really important that we increase the laws that protect children. There are also 2 other bills that are important, I think. There's the Senate Bill 836, which is aimed at increasing the privacy and protection of trafficking survivors to help keep them safe, right? It's recognizing that these kids have a lot of vulnerabilities, and we have to make sure that we protect their privacy to keep them safe. And then there's another one, it's Senate Bill 835, which would prohibit the enforceability of a non-disclosure agreement for conduct that falls under certain sexual offenses against children, including trafficking. And so these are just really good reforms that help put in place best practices to protect children.
Love it.
I love that our government is going after that.
Yeah.
And we would just encourage you guys to lend your voice and support, and that we all play a part in protecting children.
Yeah. It is. It's so cool I do encourage you to go read through this. It's going to be on our blog. Because it's so cool how they have decided we are actually going to step into the perspective of this child, and we're going to figure out what's making them vulnerable. One of my favorite bills is actually HB 372, where it changes the definition of duress to be reasonable for a person in that situation. And it's a perspective shift, right? It puts you in the perspective of someone who's experienced an insane amount of trauma, because that changes your brain, right? It's not going to be the same for someone who's not walked through that and then someone who has walked through that. And so having the same definition of duress for them is unfair. So it's just incredibly cool to see so many people come together and go, okay, there are some big changes that we can make. Let's do it. Let's do it on a state level, and let's help protect kids.
For sure. I got passed an article last week about some things going on in California right now, where up until this point, solicitation has been considered like a misdemeanor. So it could be up to 15 years in prison. And so California lawmakers are coming together and they're saying, okay, if it's a minor, there should be harsher penalties. And so they've been working to pass laws to where if it is solicitation of a child 15 and younger, that it could now be up to life in prison if convicted. And so there's some good movement there, but it's interesting because in California, you find a lot of debate around the 16 to 18-year-old age gap. And weirdly enough, California is one of 11 states in our nation that still allows child marriage. They have no minimum
Didn't know that.
age. Isn't that interesting? So they have
so
no minimum age, just one parent has to sign off on it. And that's a problem in California. No minimum age. Just one parent has to give permission.
I feel like that's the type of thing that people think exists still in the South. You know, like that's what they think. They think like backward thinking, you know, this is where it would be. No, it's interesting. One of the most popular states in the world.
Well, and it just creates that good narrative of, okay, so 16 to 18, what's the difference between a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old, right? And as a nation, we define trafficking, right? And so you have a global definition for trafficking of adults, right? So the global definition for trafficking of adults is human trafficking is the act of recruiting, transporting, transferring, harboring, or receiving individuals through force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of exploitation, right? So that is across the board, whether it's forced labor, sex slavery, or any other form of commercial exploitation. But for a minor in the U.S., you actually don't have to prove force, fraud, or coercion across the board. If there is any sort of exploitation for financial or personal gain, it is considered trafficking. And so I think that's where a lot of the debate comes is, okay, we have these nationwide laws that say this is what, qualifies as minor trafficking.
Yeah.
And now you have these state laws that say, okay, there's harsher penalties for 15 and younger, which I'm so thankful for, right?
Yeah.
Like, we need those
Yes.
protections. Child trafficking is rapidly growing.
30% last year.
Oh, the numbers are astronomical, right?
Yeah.
So we have to lean into this space. We have to do a better job of protecting children. But it's just interesting the way different people approach age and consent and penalties and all of that, and how that's playing into this national narrative. And we're seeing it pop up at a state level.
Yeah. It is so interesting because, sex work in general is just something that is being talked about, right? Kind of regardless of what your worldview is. It's totally being normalized.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people that have OnlyFans. And chances are everyone who's listening to this actually knows people who have OnlyFans. There's just this mass push to normalize sex work. And then, we're having a very public trial happening right now with Diddy.
Yeah.
Addressing trafficking charges. And so we're at such an interesting impasse in time where there's these two, and both of those things are happening on a global stage, right? There's such an interesting clash happening. And I think that it's incredible when you see people kind of come in, cut through the noise, and say, like, okay, let's see the survivor in this. Let's see the child in this. Let's see the victim in this. Because even with the normalization of sex work, man, it makes victims hard to see. And it kind of can honestly desensitize people to a victim because it's just so rampant around them. And then there's that idea of choice, right? Like, what is choice when you've been sexually assaulted since you were a child?
Yeah.
Is it a choice at that point to have an OnlyFans? I think it's questions that we kind of have to wrestle with.
Yeah.
It was interesting, though, with the Diddy trial that's happening. We actually have, if you go back to our older Human Trafficking 101 podcast, we have an episode with a survivor from the music industry. She was trafficked into a recording label. And so I do encourage you to go watch that and listen to that if you haven't. But this is definitely happening at that level. Yeah. This is not a conspiracy. This is not hype. This is definitely happening in those spaces. And it's just so important to pay attention to the survivor's voice in the middle of that.
Yeah, it's definitely elevated to a world stage, which I think is good. We're going to see some precedent set for sure. You and I both know the music industry is rampant with trafficking. And so it will be interesting to watch how it plays out. It's interesting because I was reading some of the case facts yesterday, and there's no doubt domestic violence is at play at minimum, right?
Yeah. I mean, everyone sees
it.
The videos.
Yeah.
Everyone knows kind of what's going on. Yeah.
But it brings into some question, okay, what are the differences between human trafficking, sex trafficking, and domestic violence? And there are some fine lines, but I think really what it's going to come down to is they're going to have to show one key difference, which is going to be the motive. So a lot of the motive of domestic violence is to control the other person's behavior and maintain power, whereas to be able to prove human trafficking in an adult, not in a child, in an adult, you have to show that there was a desire to exploit the person for financial or personal gain. And so it's always hard when you have a very trauma-laden situation being played out at a very public stage, and you're having to get down into the technicalities of what happened. I mean, I was reading through some of the trial bits from yesterday, and it's gruesome, right? What happened is heartbreaking. It's not okay, and yet here we are arguing in a courtroom now. Was it trafficking? Was it just domestic violence? And I think we can all agree across the board it was wrong.
Yeah.
no doubt, right? There were true victims in what happened. And I am hopeful that whatever comes out of this will create reform for the music industry, right? That we can begin to see some change in how this plays out, because there is no doubt that people are being trafficked and they are being abused inside of the music industry.
Yeah, it is such an interesting thing to watch play out on such a public stage. I mean, first off, for survivors to have to talk about that so publicly.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I both get the honor of sitting with one-on-one with survivors of this, and the courage and the bravery it takes. I mean, even going back to so many of the bills that are being written in Texas right now are because survivors have decided to use their voice and face so much scrutiny because of it. So it is such an interesting space to watch. I was looking at some of the jury selection chatter around the jury selection. Obviously, it's a closed courtroom, so we can see notes, but we can't see what's going on. There's no cameras. But even just trying to having to lay out, can you handle these gruesome topics? Can you handle the gruesome footage that you're going to see? With the reality that they say 1 in 4 people have been sexually assaulted, and so, or experienced some time of sexual abuse. So whoever is sitting in that juror, whoever is sitting in that courtroom, I don't know, this is just something that really does hit all of us at such a personal level.
For sure.
These are people. This isn't, this isn't a reality show.
No.
It's not a reality show. These are actual people having to kind of come forward and share their stories and try and get some accountability. And it's incredible. We get the privilege and honor of watching survivors do that every day. Step towards healing. It's very brave to step towards healing. It's very hard to step towards healing. But yeah, it's definitely something that is incredibly interesting as we watch on such a public, global platform this kind of be worked out.
We talk a lot about how hard it is to heal, right? Just the layers. They equate healing from trauma like recovering from a burn, right? Those same levels of intensity. And I'm not talking about I burned my arm on an oven. I'm talking about third degree body burns, right? Where skin's having to be pulled back, and I don't even want to go into details. I get queasy about such things.
Yeah.
But I think the point is, healing is really hard work, and you and I've had the honor of walking with so many women on that road and that journey of healing. And as they find healing, man, they are the grittiest, most fierce, resilient women I know, and men that I know, right? That there is something that is birthed through that process. And walking with survivors, one of the things that you hear so often, which so encourages me, is when they truly begin to find freedom and healing, that so much of their heartbeat is, how do I help others find freedom? Yeah. And so I think I take a lot of encouragement, because I know so many who've done the hard work of healing, because I know so many who've put in the time and effort, and now they're at that place of, okay, how do we help others? And so we're standing in this moment of time surrounded by an insurmountable issue that's hitting such high numbers, but we're also surrounded by men and women of fierceness saying, okay, we've walked through the fire, we've walked through hell, we've healed. How do we help change the narrative? How do we help protect others? And so, as astronomical as some of these numbers are, I also take a lot of encouragement in the fact that I think that we're going to see some big reform in our lifetime. We're going to see some big changes, all because men and women are truly catching a vision for what restoration and healing looks like, and how we can change the trajectory of the story.
For sure. Yeah, it is an incredible time, honestly, to be in the fight against trafficking. And if you're not in the fight against trafficking,
come on, we need you.
We need you. The reality of trafficking, the reality of dealing with any type of abuse is it's going to make you look at your own pain, your own suffering. It's going to have a real personal effect.
Yeah.
And we just want to encourage you, as the whole world is talking about this, be brave. There's healing available for you. There's healing available for you. And those of us who are a little bit longer in the healing process, be a safe place for other people. I feel like that is really, when we see stuff on such a massive level, it's easy to just kind of get overwhelmed, and it becomes so theoretical, right? And then how do we take that? And it is affecting our daily lives.
Absolutely.
Hearing about this stuff is affecting your daily life. Even if you have it like muted and it's just like in the background, right?
I can't mute it. I haven't been able to figure out how to mute it.
Not you. You're not muting it. But that's a tactic a lot of people use. I mean, I've used it at different seasons of my life.
For
just
sure.
like put it on mute. Maybe I can ignore it. And you can't.
Yeah.
Tensions are going to be high. Tensions are high. So how do we then translate that? Look at our own pain and find healing, and then be a safe place for others to find healing too.
And I will also say, like, there is a heaviness to it, right? There is, it does feel overwhelming some days, but the more you walk in it, the lighter it feels. Not because it is lighter, but because you grow stronger in the midst of it, and because it changes you. And so it can feel really overwhelming as you first step into it. I would encourage you to press on.
Yeah.
Right? To just take the next step, and then take the next step, and love people well, and be that safe place, and contend for freedom. Right? We can all do something.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. Well, I think we're going to wrap this one.
We covered a lot.
We've covered a lot. It's very dense subject matter as well. So we do want to invite you into the conversation, though. If there is any questions you have around trafficking, any areas of your world that you're seeing this effect that you have questions around or concerns around, let us know. We engage with people every day about trafficking.
We love it.
We are here to help make sense of something that makes no sense.
Yeah.
But help you find a path through, really, is what we are here to do and what we do every day. So, yeah, thanks for talking with me, and we will see you guys next time.
See y'all next time.